Today, I'm delighted to be joined by one of Australia's best table tennis players. She's won numerous national titles, has been representing Australia since she was a teenager, competed in the 2018 Commonwealth Games on the Gold Coast, and has already booked her ticket to the Tokyo 2021 Olympic Games. Thank you for chatting with me today, Michelle Bromley.
Thanks for having me.
There's so much I want to get into with you today, but I think we just have to start off at the very beginning. Talk to me about where this love of table tennis and where it came from and where it started for you.
Yeah, it was very much a family sport for me. I always get asked this question. I feel like I was pretty much born into the competitive world of table tennis. So it all started with my grandparents actually on both sides of the family, very much playing into their 80s for New South Wales or New Zealand. My mum, who moved to Australia from New Zealand when she was 21 years old, as everyone does, finds what they liked to do back home as a hobby and finds the local table tennis club in Sydney. And that's where she met my dad, and a year later they were married. And from there, I had two older brothers that obviously went into the sport of table tennis as well. So for me, being the younger sibling of three, it was only natural that I sort of followed everybody else in the family to compete competitively at the sport of table tennis.
So how much time are we talking at the table tennis club when you're a kid? Are you after school every day you're going there because your parents are there, grandparents are there? How much of your life revolved around it when you were younger?
Oh, well, actually, I grew up in a small country town of just 2,000 people called Golgong in central west New South Wales. So we moved up there when I was just 2 years old, and it was pretty safe to say that we were the only table tennis family in Golgong. But it didn't take long for my parents to recruit everyone else in the town to table tennis. So we started up a Friday night comp for the locals. I think it was like $2 to join. So that's where we would all be on a Friday night. But other than that, I was very much a garage player at home, training every night in the garage at home with my dad. So very humble beginnings.
For these tournaments, were you getting to compete when you were a bit younger, or were you going, or your parents going, all right, you just catch the ball, you run the ball back and forth if it gets hit off the angle or hits the edge of the court? Or did you get to be involved?
Oh, I made myself involved. So I started playing when I was about 6, just hitting the ball up against the kitchen wall at home and getting that hand-eye coordination happening. And actually, because I had two older brothers, my dad was very focused on the boys. So my mum actually took me under her wing initially with the sport and would give me like 10-minute hits here and there until, I took to the table and actually started playing some competitions and actually did all right. And then my dad was like, oh, she's actually got a bit of skill. I'll end up taking her on now. The rest was history. So it was just dad and I growing up in the shed at home every night.
Was there a point where you got better than your brothers and you started to beat them regularly? Was that a family occasion?
Oh, yeah, probably in my teenage years, as much as probably my closest sibling that's 2 years above me would hate to admit it. But we often didn't play because he'd cheat a lot. So we'd end up fighting and coming home, coming down from the shed arguing.
Having that sort of competitive spirit between you and your brothers, and obviously your family as well, since they played, do you think that kind of helped you transition into the competitive arena for table tennis, that competitions was naturally the next step?
Yeah, definitely. I think it always helps being the younger sibling. You end up getting into the sport a lot earlier, I find, as well. So you do end up, picking up those skills and sort of following everybody else's footsteps in that competitive nature as well from such an early age.
Were there any other sports that you tried your hand at or looked at when you were younger, or because of your family background, was it more just, okay, you're playing table tennis?
I did actually. Any chance I got, I played any sport for the school that I could. So cricket, soccer, volleyball, tennis, squash, all of those that were sort of on offer, touch footy. But as far as outside of sport, I guess, outside of school, I did get tennis lessons once a week, but it was always really table tennis that was my key focus. And like weekends, we'd all get packed up in the car at like 4:30 a.m. to make the 4-hour trip to Sydney for the state championships or whatever. It was very much the key focus for the family was table tennis.
Those trips to Sydney, who was driving, who was in the front seat? Can you talk me through those and how much, because that probably would have been a really a cherished moment as a memory, as part of your childhood, having those memories to go,
Oh,
we
yeah,
share those
definitely. We
times.
still, yeah. So my dad was actually a truck driver, so he was used to driving at all random hours and for many hours on end as well. So he was always the driver. Mum was in the passenger seat, and then the three kids were like sardines in the back seat. And we do often laugh at some of the tragic music we had to listen to as well of Dad's.
Did he have any particulars that he'd always play, and you just, when you hear it now, you go, oh, that reminds me of those road trips?
Yeah, but they were totally random. I don't even know what they're called. But when they come on, I'm like, oh God.
Obviously, table tennis has been around for a long time, but even in the Olympics, I think it's 1988 it started there. So looking back at Olympic memories for you, table tennis would have been there and you would have been able to watch it. Was it a case of, if table tennis was on at the Olympics, that's what was on your TV at home, or were there other sports that sort of you enjoyed watching as well?
Oh, I definitely liked watching the swimming. I felt like table tennis, because it isn't a mainstream sport, you might be lucky to get a glimpse of it at like 3 a.m. the highlights. But technology's come a long way now, so you can tend to choose what you want to watch these days. But very much swimming was on the agenda in our household for the Olympics. Probably my earliest memory of an Olympic Games was the 1996 Kieran Perkins win from lane 8 in the 1500 metres. So I very much remember that as an 8-year-old, and just more so the hype around the fact that he was the slowest qualifier and then was able to come out with such a huge victory in the final. And also even the 2000 Olympics, where I was a little bit older, so I kind of more understood what the Olympic Games were truly about. And very much I remember the Eric Moussambani swim, where the 100 metres, where he was clearly struggling, but the crowd were just so supportive of him and really getting behind him that it didn't even matter that he, what he came. It was that, and that really hit home for me what the Olympics was really about as well. It wasn't just about getting medals, which obviously everyone wants to do, but it was also about celebrating, humanity and bringing the world together through sport. So I think it's, I just love everything about the Olympic Games.
Is it really special then that table tennis, kind of, as you mentioned, it's not one of the mainstream sports, but the fact that it still gets represented in the Olympic Games, that it still has a big profile there, does it kind of really motivate you towards that goal? We'll touch on obviously qualifying this year a bit later, but having that representation of table tennis there growing up, does that really help you go, okay, I can really put all my focus into this, knowing that there's this higher goal of the Olympics there for me?
Yeah, exactly. And I guess the key thing is that it's not a mainstream sport in Australia, but actually it's got huge coverage worldwide with so many different countries actually playing table tennis. But for me, as with my first goal of wanting to be an Olympian was really seeded in my mind as a 10-year-old through my dad, who was the first one that actually highlighted to me that I could actually play table tennis at the Olympics. And so I think from then on, playing the Olympics, playing in Commonwealth Games have always been the key milestones, or the epitome of what table tennis has been about for me, and trying to reach those top goals in the sport.
Obviously, you've spoken about those trips to Sydney and some of the smaller milestones. I think I was reading on the profile on the Australian Olympic side, I think 7 or 8, you won your first trophy at a state championship. You won a national title at 13. Have you always had that competitive nature because of your siblings? And do you remember those sort of first competitions and going, okay, I want to make my mark, I want to win here, even at a young age?
Yeah, I don't know if it's necessarily because of my siblings, but I think just my personality in general, I've always strived to be the best I can be. And I've always had a bit of a work ethic that, like, I would feel guilty if I didn't train. So I always having that preparation mindset. I've just sort of always had that. And I was always the one hounding Dad to come up to the shed each night and train with me versus the other way around.
When you were sort of in school, sort of towards high school, when you're starting to compete in more national events and it's becoming more serious, what is sort of your training regime to school? What's that balance like, and trying to obviously do your best to keep practicing and keep training, but keep doing other things as well, like school?
Yeah, I think, well, for school, I mean, I very much still was seeing sport as my number one priority. So, I mean, school, I'd obviously want to do my best, but I always just loved to play table tennis and try and do as best I could on the sporting arena as well. So, for me, I mean, it was easy for me to um, like go to school in the day and then train of an evening with my dad at home. So that was fine. It's more so even now where I'm actually working full time and then 9 till 5 Monday to Friday, and then still trying to manage being a professional athlete around 9 to 5. So every day, every evening after work, I'm training, and it just means I've got really long days. So it's been really helpful to have a supportive husband who does all the cooking, for instance, just because I am so time poor. But yeah, it's definitely it's something I've gotten used to doing and living such a busy life, I guess, just in order to strive for my dreams and be able to say that I am an Olympian.
Let's go into that training a bit, because you mentioned before just sort of hitting the paddle against a wall or whatever it might have been, annoying your parents a little bit with the constant sound of it. And how has that changed? Because I was reading another article that you've got this robot now at home that helps your training regime. Can you imagine the difference now?
So the robot definitely came in handy with COVID during the 3.5 month lockdown last year. So all the gyms and all the table tennis centres were closed in Sydney, which definitely made the robot and me being able to train possible, going back to my roots of training in the garage at home. But more so now that everything's sort of back to normal with COVID, as far as like things being opened up, most of my training is done with other players, and then also through the gym as well. So I'm doing about 18 hours of on-court training a week, and then another 3 to 4 hours of gym work as well.
You mentioned before kind of having to have the full-time job as well. That table tennis isn't a sport that's afforded the professionalism of something like a swimming or an athletics. Were there any points in your career where you kind of went, maybe I can't do this full time, or I can't dedicate everything to table tennis just because of the other barriers that are kind of there, limiting your ability to take it up full time, I guess?
I've always seemed to be able to make it work. And I guess it's just like, how much do you want to achieve your dreams or not? And what sacrifices are you willing to make in order for it to happen? So for me, I definitely feel like I've sacrificed hanging out with friends a lot, or going to every single function or friends catch up that I've been asked to go to. Like, you do often find yourself saying, oh, no, sorry, I've got training that day or whatever. So I think, it's just a matter of sacrificing for what you want to achieve in life.
And you kind of mentioned before how table tennis, while it isn't as big here in Australia, it isn't one of the mainstream sports. In other countries around the world, it is. And as a result, there would be professional players in other countries. And does that make it a bit sweeter when you are able to compete on an international level and really push them, and knowing that the struggle and dedication that you've had, that you're now competing with players who are fully supported to be table tennis players full time?
Yeah, it is. It is a great achievement that I've been able to sort of manage what I can living in Australia, and also living so far away from Europe, where you can pop on a flight and be 2 hours into a new country playing the world circuit, for instance. So I guess it's been difficult living in Australia in that we don't have that constant international exposure. But I mean, I love getting the opportunity to test myself against the world's best, and even just being exposed to that high level of the sport. It's amazing.
In a typical year, we obviously won't look at last year because of COVID, but what's your sort of competition and travel schedule like? How frequently are you going overseas to compete, if at all?
Yeah, so usually there's probably 1 to 2 key world competitions that will play in per year. And then you've obviously got your Australian Open, which brings the world's best to our country, which is amazing to have them on home soil. Our nationals, there's usually a top 10 event in there, and also the local state championships. And here and there, there's some random prize money tournaments along the way as well.
Do you remember the first time that you represented Australia and what that feeling was like for you?
Yeah, the first time that I got called up for the Australian team was a test match against Singapore. I think it was back in 2001. So I was, 14 years old. I think from there, like, it's just amazing to imagine how many different countries the sport of table tennis has been able to take me to. I kind of probably taken it for a bit for granted growing up. But looking back, I've been to so many different places that, lots of people my age would never have gotten to experience, and seeing so many different cultures and things like that just through sport. So definitely treasure that now looking back, but I feel like I did probably take it for granted a little bit.
Were your parents able to come with you on that trip? Was it a special moment you could share with them as well?
My mum actually came, yeah. So usually what they would do was they'd alternate trips. So one time mum would come, one time dad would come. Dad was always at the local stuff, always coaching me on the bench. So it's been really nice to share in the journey with them over the years as well.
There was a really nice quote I read that about you talking about your dad, and just that he was your hero essentially. Can you just talk to me about the impact that he had, not only on your table tennis career, because obviously that's enormous considering where you are now, but just on life in general, and how important he was for you growing up and getting to where you are now?
Yeah, definitely. I think my dad, anyone who's met my dad would agree that he was definitely a one-of-a-kind sort of personality. He had this amazing charisma about him, and a bit quirky. But he was sort of the one person that really believed, wholeheartedly in my journey as a table tennis player, and that I could achieve great things in the sport. And also, I think for me, because I did get to also compete alongside him and see him compete as well, what I got from him was that sheer determination, which I feel like I have on the court now as well, trying to grovel for every ball that comes back. Definitely he was a never say die type of person, which, and even now things that he would say to me as a coach on the side of the court, I say to myself now, because he's no longer here with us. But it definitely, like, he just knew what to say, and we were always really good partners in crime, as me as a player and him on the bench. So definitely miss those times. I remember the first tournament that I played back after my dad passed away, I just burst out crying, because just like being able to turn around and he wasn't there anymore, watching me, it was just, something I've now learned to deal with, but it definitely wasn't easy to start with, knowing that he was always on my bench growing up and at every single tournament that I played in locally.
How was that coach-athlete relationship? Obviously, you hear stories about when parents are coaching their children, it can get a bit messy sometimes, or they're not as harsh on them, or they're too easy on them. But how did you find it?
I actually found he could balance the roles quite well between, being a parent and like really wanting their kid to win, but also being the coach and not showing any emotion. There's nothing worse than turning around and like seeing this stressed face that wants to win more than you do, which he was pretty good at hiding. So we seem to work well as a team, both as father-daughter, but also player-coach, which I think is quite rare.
Now, obviously, the 2018 Com Games was a pretty special moment for you in getting to represent your country here on home soil. Can you talk to me through what it was like qualifying and knowing you'd made that team and obviously competing at that level?
Oh, yeah. So Commonwealth Games 2018, that was my fourth attempt at trialling and trying to make a Commonwealth Games for Australia. I think for me, it was always going to be a super special one to be able to make, given the fact it was going to be on home soil with the home crowd, and also being able to have all of my closest family and friends watching on the sidelines. So that was definitely a career highlight for me, being able to experience like the home crowd feel, but also the fact that I was able to play in front of, my brothers and my mum, my husband, who had seen my struggles throughout my sporting career. And they often they missed out on seeing me a lot of the times playing internationally, particularly my brothers who would never come. So for them to be able to enjoy that experience as much as me, it was really great.
And did that moment kind of light a fire on you to go, okay, I've done this. I know I can compete at this level. The Olympics is next. Was that a clear goal after the Com Games?
It definitely helped. It definitely helped in keeping me on track for another 2 years to give it another crack to finally, make an Olympic Games. Again, it was my 4th time of trying to make an Olympic Games. So, and it is so nerve-wracking because you kind of embark on this journey wholeheartedly and you don't ever really know if the hard work's going to pay off. So I'm just so, happy and relieved that it has all paid off, and fingers crossed for Tokyo 2021.
Let's talk about this qualifying for the Olympics, because I think it was Jianfang Lei that you beat, I think for the first time you said in 5 years or something like that, to, I think it was the 8th win of the qualification or something along those lines. You won 8 out of your 9 games to book your ticket to the Olympics. The moment after you realized that you're going to Tokyo, what did you feel like, and what were the emotions you had in that moment?
Oh, so the last point of the match, so I was actually leading 3-0 and almost, like, I think I had a match point there to win 4-0 easily, and she ended up coming back to 3-all, so it was a bit of a nail biter in the end. But the relief of when she missed that last my serve off the end of the table, like, even though it looks like I was ecstatic, and I was ecstatic that I won, I still was in actual disbelief that I'd actually been able to do it. And I remember coming off the court and, like, my brother hugged me, my husband Stu hugged me, and I had to actually stop for a moment. And I said to Stu, am I in? Am I actually in? Like, I just wanted someone to say, yes, you're in. But it was an amazing feeling. I feel like, all the hard work across all these years, has paid off. And I guess the struggles of how much it was a struggle for me to get to the point where I was representing Australia in the Olympic Games has definitely made me a better player, a better person, a stronger person mentally as well for all those challenges that I've experienced across my sporting career.
I imagine the table tennis team, the ones who have represented Australia, it'd be quite a close-knit community. So they must have been just ecstatic for you as well that you've got this opportunity.
Yeah, I think everyone was just elated for me that I'd finally made the Olympic Games, because I've always been sort of number 4 in the team or whatever, and then to be able to come out and actually win the qualification event, it was just a surreal feeling. And I just played super well over those 3 days. And I felt really strong mentally and physically for the trials as well, it was just amazing.
You would have probably felt a lot of momentum going towards Tokyo on the back of that result, and then all of a sudden this coronavirus kind of comes out of nowhere and delays it all. Can you remember where you were when you found out the news that the Olympics were delayed or postponed 12 months?
Oh, yeah. I was just at home actually, because our whole office had gone into working from home by that stage, March last year. So I got the news when I was at home. It was a bit of a blow, and it was sort of, I think, as an athlete, like, we had qualified, but we hadn't formally been announced in the Olympic team by that stage as well. So we were all a bit on edge around, will they make us do the qualification again now that it's all postponed by a year? We haven't been announced formally. All these sort of, doubts started creeping in, but the AOC did very quickly get onto all the athletes and assure them that, if you've gone through the qualification process already, you're safe, which was really nice. But yeah, obviously it's not ideal that the games were postponed, but postponement's far better than a cancellation. So, I was happy to wait it out for another 12 months. And I guess it just gave me another 12 months to work on my game and be even stronger than where I was going to be in Tokyo last year.
Over the last 12 months, has there ever been a point where you've gone, oh, I don't think the Olympics are going to happen. I can't believe after all this time I've qualified and the Olympics aren't going to go ahead. Has there been ever any doubts like that?
Not specifically, not that negative, but not to the point where I've gone, oh, it's going to get cancelled. But definitely, it's not a nice feeling to hear all the negative press. Like come January, there was already media reports coming out with all big doubts over the Olympic Games. You try and just sort of put those aside and focus on what you can control as an athlete, which is your preparation and your attitude and whatever. I mean, it's not nice, but just trying to stay positive and plan as best I can.
So now we're in an Olympic year again, 2 years back to back. How is your preparation looking? What's the road like leading into July? How do you step up your preparation, and what's your sort of goal targets to be at by the time you get to Japan?
Yeah, I guess it's a bit of an interesting one, and it's sort of everyone, I guess, globally is sort of in the same boat where, for me personally, I haven't had any international match exposure since 2019. And I know we're not the only sports where that's sort of happened with COVID. So I guess for us now, it's more around, where last year we were planning all these international events leading into Tokyo, things like that are looking more likely that they won't be possible. So from my side, I'm really trying to get as many local, serious, good quality matches in between now and July, knowing that there's so many travel restrictions still happening around the world. Unlikely that we'll get anywhere international before July. So just focusing on getting as many matches under my belt locally. Hopefully we can get together as a team and do some, training camps together and get that team bonding happening. I think a lot of the guys are in Melbourne, so I'd be keen to get down there prior to heading over to Tokyo as well, just to train as a team and, get that team spirit firing.
Without a lot of that sort of international competition and stuff, are you confident that you'll still be at 100% by the time you get to Tokyo?
So I think a lot of it is going to be, for me, a mental challenge more than anything. Just because it's going to be such a new environment for me playing, at the Olympics. So for me, I'm really going to be focusing on my mindset and just making sure I don't get overwhelmed with the experience. I think that's going to be super important in order for me to be able to bring out my best table tennis.
What were the parts of the Olympics you're most looking forward to? Obviously, it's going to be a bit different now. I think Ian Chesterman's spoken about how it's going to be fly in, fly out a little bit. You won't get to spend as much time in the Olympic Village. But were there certain parts of Olympic life that you were kind of really excited to experience over there?
So I'm super excited just to get my gear. I think that's going to be amazing just to get all the equipment and actually make it feel real. And then also, opening ceremony obviously is a key one. Sorry, my dog just came up.
That's all right.
Opening ceremony is going to be key. I mean, everyone wants to have that experience of marching out. Obviously, it might be an empty stadium, I don't know. But I'd still like to, take part in that if that's an opportunity. And then also, I mean, again, I would have liked to have been able to support fellow, Australians in whatever sport they were pursuing gold or, whatever for. So we'll just have to wait and see, I guess. I definitely will be not a normal Olympic Games, but at the same time, it's going to be still a memorable one, a COVID Games. Again, it's still going to be memorable in its own way, and I'm sure they're going to still work to make it super special for all the athletes.
Well, I think I was looking, the women's table tennis, I think, is the second day or even the first day of competition.
First day.
After
9 a.m. first day. Yeah.
Well, that means you should be in Tokyo when the opening ceremony is on. So hopefully you'll be able to participate in that then. That's kind of exciting. But you won't be able to have as big a night as maybe some of the other athletes.
I'm all right with that.
I want to talk about table tennis a bit more generally before we finish off, because obviously the professional side of it, but I think everyone in Australia kind of thinks at some sort of level they can kind of play table tennis. What do you think makes a good table tennis player? What separates the sort of the pub player or something like that to someone like you who's dedicated that time? What do you think that difference is?
Oh, I think it purely just comes down to training and the amount of time that you're spending, honing those skills on the court. But definitely everyone does seem to think they're an amazing table tennis player, whether they're the best in their family or at school or whatever. And I feel like it's a sport that everyone does love to play. But yeah, I mean, I think it really just comes down to the time that you're dedicating to the sports, like anything, just the training involved. And it's not one of those sports that you can just get by being fit or whatever. You actually need to have the touch and the skills of, like the style of hitting the ball and things like that, and being able to craft that spin, which usually that's the key when you're trying to play a social player, is the spin. No one can deal with the spins on the ball, but that all comes with proper training. So
when you tell people you play table tennis, are a lot of them like, all right, let's have a game? Like, it's kind of underselling your skills a little bit and not realizing just how good at table tennis you are?
Yeah, I think so. I think that just comes down to, like, in Australia, people aren't really exposed too much to that competitive side. So they definitely, when they see you play, like, their mind is blown, because it's just totally different to anything they've really ever experienced in their own world of playing table tennis in the garage with the family or whatever. So it's really nice to be able to share your skills with people like that, and sort of open the mind up to what the competitive world of table tennis is all about.
Is it a bit nice too if someone's a bit cocky or a bit confident that they think they can beat you to bring them down a level as well?
Always.
What is your favorite part about the sport? Is there something about the camaraderie there? Is it the actual, like you said, the different elements of skill that are involved? Is there something in particular that keeps you coming back to the sport and keeps bringing you back to it?
I think it is quite an addictive sport. I don't know if that ping pong sound, like, we had 3.5 months of lockdown last year. It was just me and the robot. And I remember going back into the hall for the first time with, 30 other tables and balls just getting hit around everywhere. And it was just such a nice feeling hearing that ping pong ball bouncing around. But what I do really love the competitive side of the sport too, and the speed and the skill involved with, being so fast and being able to return all those tricky balls with the spins and everything like that. So yeah, it is an amazing sport to play, especially at high level.
Have you managed to sort of tune out that noise now? I can imagine, especially with 30 other tables, it would be quite distracting just hearing ping pong balls going back and forth.
Oh yeah, it's like background noise.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, if I'm ever walking around somewhere and I can distinctively know, oh, there's a table tennis table around here somewhere, I can hear it.
The last thing I want to finish off with, everyone I chat to, I ask a simple question, but it brings out a lot of different answers. And I don't know what it might be for you. It could be family related, it could be the sport related, but what are you most proud of? Whether it's career related, whether it's something else, is there something in your life so far that you go, yeah, I'm proud that I've achieved that?
Oh, for me, I think it would be sport related. Probably just the fact that I'm 33 now, finally getting to live out my dream as an Olympian. I'm proud of the fact that I've been able to stick to it. You see, I'm assuming it's across all sports. Particularly what I've seen is that people give up after juniors. So they might be a top junior, and then, you need, it's hard to transition from juniors to senior level in any sport. So often people give up way too early, in my opinion. You see some great talents, that just give up. So for me, I'm just proud of myself that I've been able to stick through it and, rise above and be able to finally achieve my ultimate goals on the table tennis court.
Well, Michelle, we can't wait to watch you achieve those goals over in Tokyo. Hopefully, fingers crossed, everything goes ahead this year, but I'm confident it will. And we cannot wait to see you representing the green and gold over in Tokyo. Thank you so much for joining me today and having a chat.
Thank you. Looking forward to it.